Erica, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's so great to be here.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a long time coming. I think we talked a couple years ago about you being on, and I think this is the story of me. I'm always like, yo, you should come on the show, and then I don't send the calendar, or we don't, and then life happens, right? And fast
Life
forward,
lives,
yeah,
right? It's
but
and
everything
but we're
happens when it's supposed to.
I was gonna just say that, like it's exactly how it's supposed to be, and I'm like, it feels like it's the perfect day to be here.
Absolutely. So I'm excited to dive into your journey, your story, the impact you're making right now. But why don't we start with who is Erica today, and then we'll break down how you got there.
Oh man, that's a loaded question. And I like to say, listen, although my middle name is Lee, Lea, I like to say that my middle name is actually Audacious now. Just a descriptor that I use for myself and really in the branding that I use. So, Erica Rothenberger, originally from, Plymouth, Massachusetts, and now I always say fast forward from the days of the pilgrims to like where I am now, and just a woman who is on a mission as a mom of two young kids, as a corporate executive who has her degree in civil engineering and her MBA in leading field leadership development training across the nation. But really, the big sombrero on the other side, I say I wear a lot of different hats, from the baseball hat to the construction hat, but also the big sombrero where, I have my podcast called Grit, Grace, and Glitz. I just published my book, my second book called Audacious Expansion, which came out on February 22nd. I am now leading into my second year of my my Audacious Women Summit that happens in October of every year, and which will lead into an incredible mastermind for those 15 to 20 women who are really looking to next level and really unfold, unpack, and step into the most audacious version of themselves in 2027.
Yeah, I love it, and I love. And you said Plymouth, Massachusetts, and immediately I was like, Plymouth Rock, the most underwhelming tourist attraction in the entire world. I went when I was a kid, and I just remember like being like, "That's it."
Oh, I love that you brought this up because everyone says that, to so much so that when I was about, I don't know, 13 years old and got my first job, I was scooping ice cream at a place across the street from the Plymouth Rock, actually called Pebbles. And the reason it's called Pebbles is there's so many tourists that come there who expect this ginormous, rock, and the structure around it is very misleading, because then you go and you look down and it's like you're looking at like the size of a penny in comparison.
Yeah, yeah, it's absolutely wild. But I love that you use the word audacious, and I want to start with that and kind of go, what does audacious mean to you?
I love this. So I think many people that hear the word audacious and they think like bold and brave and big and, kind of gritty and in your face. And you can look at the word that way. And part of the word still is defined that way, right? To be bold and to be brave. But really, when you take back the layers of it, the way I really like to describe and remind people of audacious actions are those when no one's watching. What are you doing when you're getting up early? What are you doing when you're staying up late? What are the ethics and the values and the hard work that you're doing behind the scenes when no one's applauding, when no one's cheering you on, when the accolades aren't coming? To me, those are the audacious actions. Those are the ones that are really the hard ones to take, because it's really easy to step on the stage and it's really easy in the big scheme of things, right? When everyone's clapping and everyone's expecting you to be there. But it's the things that we do behind the scenes, the days in between, the days when we want to throw the towel in and we decide that we're going to keep going. We decide we're going to take that action. We decide to make that first phone call or set that boundary or decide to lace up our sneakers when the alarm goes off instead of pressing snooze and rolling back over.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously you've created so much success in your life from a career standpoint, right? But you've done it in such a niche way that most women aren't in your space of construction, which is why you say I wear the construction hat, right? And so, talk a little bit about how you found yourself in that place, and then I want to talk about how you're able to kind of stand out and push through and continue to rise up in these companies and businesses.
Love that question. Thanks for asking it. And I'm going to back you up into seventh grade. It was take your daughter to work day. And I didn't go to work with my mom or dad, but my mom was a school teacher, and one of her students' moms was a civil engineer at the EPA in Boston. And I'll never forget that day driving into Boston and seeing the big glassy buildings and going up to the, I don't know, 47th floor of her office and understanding what she did. But that was really exciting to me. But it was when in the afternoon, she took me out to a job site. And we both put our job boots on. And I saw her wear those different hats. And I saw her being bold and brave and walking onto this job site where she was the only female beside myself who walked on that job site that day. And my uncle and my grandfather were both mechanical engineers. And I just had this ambition in me that you give me a challenge and it's like, okay, listen, like if it's hard, I'm going to figure out how to do it, right? I tell my kids everything's figure outable. And, I remember checking the box before I went to Villanova saying I was going to be a civil engineer. And I remember many times, again, wanting to throw the towel in, but knowing that there was this fire within me to say, hey, listen, what could I do with this? And what I wanted to say about like engineering, right? Like the simplest way from A to B, right? It was really about problem solving. It's not that I remember every fluid dynamics class anymore or the statistics class that I probably didn't do so well in. It's the absolute like problem solving and then knowing I was able to overcome like to me a degree that was really challenging, right? In a lot of ways. And then graduating and someone saying, hey, well, you really should get into, you really should design bridges and roadways and piles. And I remember like one of my professors actually asked if I wanted to stay on for a fellowship and get my, to get my graduate degree in civil engineering. And at which point I said, I really think I need some real life experience. And I really want to remind people, like sometimes you have to go out and actually get the experience. And I'm so glad I did because someone said, well, what about getting into construction? I was like, wait, I didn't just go to civil engineering school and bust my, all this work for 4 years to get into construction. And what I realized is sometimes it's the path that we don't think that we're going to take that actually ends up being the right path. And fast forward, getting my first job in general contracting in a job site in Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is just south of the Newark airport on top of an old landfill. And I remember the project manager handing me a set of plans that day saying, you're going to be in charge of the MEPs. Justin, I had no idea what that stood for. They said all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire suppression system. So I'm like, wait, so I have to make sure that the lights go on, that the toilets flush, and that if there's a fire, like it actually will be like protected. They're like, yes. I go, I didn't go to school for that. I went to school how to dig, like, build bridges and why I'm telling you this is because I want to remind anyone if you feel like you're up against the challenge, like the concrete wall is in front of you, right? It's the little steps, it's the consistency. It was that first day showing up on that job site with my hard hat and my steel toe boots and being in an industry at that time that had less than 5% of women in the industry. And now it's about 11 to 12% in the industry. We still have a long way to go, but the movement that's been made and being willing to show up at the board table or on the job site and being willing to lean in and, I remember wanting, and I talk about this a lot in my book, wanting to wear like the colors that would like blend in the navies and the tans. And then I started showing up with my pink pants on. And I'm like, you know what? Like, this is my audacious style. And if they don't like it, then a couple words I said.
No, no, I love it, and feel free to say whatever couple words that you want to say on here. And it's fascinating sometimes because I've heard so many people's journeys through the last 10 years of doing this podcast, and it's so often the things it's the path we didn't think we'd walk down. We didn't know, right? Like I started podcasting 10 years ago when podcasting was barely a thing, and now this is what I do for a living, and it's like that's crazy. So how do you, as somebody who was driven, focused from the age of 7, got introduced to something and said, hey, I want to do this. And then all of a sudden, you didn't keep your blinders on. You were open to the opportunity. What do you say to people to say, hey, stay, like, how can you say to somebody like, yes, I understand you have a goal, but be open to other opportunities? And how can they make themselves, what's the word I'm looking for? How can they be okay with being uncomfortable moving forward in life?
I love this question, Justin. And, I want people to think about, okay, listen, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? Because someone's going to go and do it. And if you have that ambition in your heart, or you feel that there is that instinct to go and try it, what do you have to lose? And in looking back, any of us that share our stories, we all can look back at that part of our lives and say, okay, I'm so glad I took the risk, right? And it's usually not until after it happens. But when it actually does happen, it's really amazing to see how much we can actually move and how much we can bend. And I don't have a pink rubber band on me, and I'm looking around for one. But what I like to compare it to is at my keynotes, I give out a pink rubber band. And it's, just a normal rubber band. And I remind people that we stay in a comfortable circumference, right? We stay in a comfortable, like just like a rubber band without being stretched. But every once in a while, we need to stretch it. And when we stretch it, we create resilience. And the more we stretch it, the more uncomfortable it starts to feel, but the easier it is to go to that place. We can always come back to the level of comfort,
Mm,
right? We can always come back to what feels safe. But where does safe really get us? Right? It's when we expand, it's when we stretch, it's when we are ready to take that quantum leap. And it's not usually one stretch. It's, hey, listen, I stretched a little today and I stretched a little tomorrow. And that 1% principle of doing a little bit at a time. But I would ask you if you have that feeling in you, like you're destined for more. And I don't mean adding more to your plate, but there's something that's calling you that you say, you know what? I know there's something bigger I'm supposed to leave in this earth, right? Because at the end of the day, isn't that what we all want to do is to leave a legacy for, our kids or for someone behind us or for the woman who wants to get into the construction industry who might be scared right now and to be that leader and to be that person who they said, you know what, if she could do it, I can do it too. Because there was someone who went in front of me who dared to do it, right? And that I
yeah.
look up to. And just imagine what you can do if you're willing to make that stretch in your life.
I love it. I love it. So, one thing I realized, obviously being in the space that I'm in, working with high performers, so often, and it's both men and women, so often, uh, you work your butt off to get to the point where you've reached all your goals. You've set these goals for yourself. You've reached all of them, and you're supposed to feel like you have all this joy and comfort in life and all these things, but there's something missing in them.
Hmm.
There's a piece that is like, okay, well, I did everything I was supposed to get. I don't feel the way I'm supposed to feel. And sometimes it comes down to a place of like, I don't feel worthy of anything more, right? Because I've reached everything. How can somebody begin to find fulfillment when they didn't get it in the place they thought they were going to get it from?
This is a loaded question. And, I'm going to be really blunt here because that's being audacious. Is like, I still struggle with this a lot, right? Like, this is an area like, and I want to just remind you that if you're listening to this, like, I truly believe like the more you grow and the more you expand and the more you stretch that rubber band, the harder it is to come back to what just feels comfortable and settled, right? And if you're not stretching, well, you're not growing. And if you're not growing, you're not changing. And if you're not, changing, you're slowly dying, right? Like, so to me, to feel unsettled, I don't want to say I want you to feel that way all of the time, but to me it's actually a good feeling. It's a good feeling to say, listen, like, I'm not comfortable with where I am right now because I know there's something more for me. And to
Mm,
me, that's where true growth lies. If I was just like, check the box, go to work, eat the same dinner, watch the same TV show, like, where is that going to get me in my life? Right? And so I want to remind anyone that's listening to this that it's okay to not feel okay with where you're at right now. It's okay to say, listen, I know I need something more. But what I want to remind you is to find ways to celebrate. And I really have to work hard on this. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of the high achievers who listen to your podcast need to do this is how can you celebrate? Because you mentioned something to me before we even started this show, and I'm guilty of it too, right? How was your event was so amazing. I went to Justin's event. I loved it. It was like just so many amazing people. I know he has a bunch of events coming up. And yet you're like, I was on to the next thing, right? And we sometimes don't just stop and say, okay, what did we celebrate? So I actually have a practice that I teach a lot of my high achievers to do. And it's actually called your audacious badass list. And I ask you to open up your phone and do this right after you get off the podcast. You can do it as you're listening to me right now and literally just take the next 60 seconds and write all the audacious things that you've already done. I don't know, maybe you landed the job, maybe you had two babies, maybe you set a boundary, maybe you quit the job, maybe you decided to travel the world. I have no idea what your audacious things are and they don't have to be Justin's, they don't have to be Erica's, they're yours. And I would ask you to every day just add a couple things to it. Take a peek at it. Have a check in with yourself and remind yourself how far you've come. Because I think sometimes when we're in the driver's seat, we don't realize how far we've already gone. And what I would remind you is when you have those self-deprecating days, when you have those days where like it feels like everything's hitting the fan, right? Pull out that badass list and remind yourself, holy shit, like I've done a lot of things. And like I have to be damn proud of myself and celebrate those things. Find a way to actually pause and celebrate. Because if you don't celebrate for what you already have, to me, you can't attract more. And I'm guilty of not pausing and not celebrating those things. And it's an area that I'm working on every day.
Yeah. And I love that. And I tell people all the time, like, look, I'm just on a journey, right? Like I haven't
Yeah.
figured it all out. And, I do this whole thing with my keynote talking about overcoming limiting beliefs. And like, I very much point out, like, I want you to understand something. That voice still pops up back into my head, right? I've equipped myself with the tools to make sure that I quiet it again faster
Yes.
every single time, right? And so we're all just a work in progress. And I love that you teach that, and I think it's so smart. We actually usually after my event go on a vacation to celebrate the success of the event, but we went on vacation 2 weeks before the event, and so it was
Oh, I
like, okay, we're
remember
not going to
that.
go jump out and do another one.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was like, so I try and do that whenever I can, right? And my wife is incredible at, like, being like, hey, you should be really proud of yourself. Like, this is amazing and all that stuff. But, as high achievers, you're always like, that could have been better. This could have been better over here, like all that kind of stuff. But I love that perspective of celebrating those wins. So I want to ask you, like, obviously now you do this event for women, which is coming up in October, I believe.
Yes.
So October, what are the dates?
October 15th is the VIP. October 16th is the actual Audacious Summit Day.
I love it. And so obviously you bring these women together and inspire them and lift them up and give them tools and all these things. What made you want to do that, right? Like, obviously you could have just settled in on your job and continue to focus on that. And obviously you have kids and you got a lot on your plate. What made you want to be able to kind of focus in and help these women?
Mm. It was a calling. It was the universe. When you feel, I always say it's almost like I'll compare it to like if there's a man or a woman, you see that pair of shoes that you should buy, and then the next day you're thinking about it, and then 3 days later you go back and you like no, you should buy them, right? And you debate over it for a couple days. If you have that instinct and it keeps popping up in your life, like I kept having this calling of like, you need to create something, you need to create a movement. And I think in a world that's more connected than we've ever been, one of my keynotes is, talks about the power of meaningful connections. We're more connected than we've ever been, but we're so disconnected. And
Yeah.
to actually be together. And at the end of the day, it really came from a horrific event that happened in my life back in 2022. And what I realized is that my oxygen was connection. I thought it was the doctors and I thought it was the nurses and I thought it was the prescriptions and and yes, all of that was great, but that's not what saved me. At the end of the day, what really saved me is the people in my life. And that to me has to be so important. And what I realized is I would never be where I am today after what happened to me and or just in any aspect of my life if it weren't for Susan Castagna, who I mentioned at the beginning, who took me to the EPA back in seventh grade, or for my grandfather or uncle, who were engineers who I got to watch as a young girl growing up, and my grandfather doing the Rube Goldberg project with me, right? It's the connection and the people who are inspiring us, right? That to get us to that next level. And so I just want to remind you, like, if in fact you need to be in that room, like get in the room, buy the ticket, be around the right people, elevate yourself, right? And I talk about this. I have a bold method in my book, and the L is leaning on others, right? Like we are not meant to do life alone.
Yeah.
But if you're not raising your bar and you're not around other people who are doing those bigger, bolder, badass things than you, like you're in the wrong room. And my mom always said to me, right? Like never buy the biggest house in the neighborhood, buy the smallest house in the biggest neighborhood, right? And with the big houses around it, because you're going to elevate yourself. Like, right? When we're around people who are high performers, we just sit within 25-foot radius of them. We instantly raise our performance by 15% just by sitting in their radiant, like their radius of them. However, conversely, when we sit with low achievers, or people that really are kind of bringing us down. I like to say the crab in the bucket, right? Pulling you back. Your performance goes down by 25%.
Mm,
Like you get to choose. And so
yeah.
to me, I wanted to curate a room where people could be with those other people that were just going to lift them up, that were going to boost them, that were going to allow women to unlock that audacity to that next level.
Yeah, no, and it's so true, and that's why obviously being in masterminds and watching and running my mastermind over the last 3+ years, it's been incredible, right? We had one woman in the mastermind who went from $30,000 a year to $40,000 a month, and it's not one thing she learned, it's not one thing that was said, it's the fact that she A, invested in herself, which is important, and B, she got into a room full of people who are moving at a much faster pace, and she's like, I got to keep up, right? And I think
Yep.
that that's such like a testament to exactly what you're saying. And then on the reverse side, how important is connection? I mean, COVID was the greatest social experiment of all time. Drug use went through the roof, suicide went through the roof because people missed connection, right? And it's like this crazy
Yep.
thing, and it's so important to be in the room with those people. Obviously, your room being one of them in October, to be in the room with people who are moving at a different pace, right? And it definitely elevates you without a doubt. I also believe that the worst things we go through in life can 1000% be the catalyst for greatness. All of this thing that I built, the Growth Now movement, all the things, is because my mom passed away after a 20-year battle with opioids. You talked about a moment in 2022, and I'd love to go there with you, talking about that moment
Yeah.
that really sprangboard you into building this movement yourself.
Yeah. And I want to remind anyone who's listening to this, right? Like your interruption is your invitation, right? Your mom's story, someone else who's listening, who's going through a bitter divorce right now, someone else who has a kid that just got a horrible diagnosis, right? It can be your invitation. And I don't think any of us see it when we're in the muck, but it's years later or times later after really working on ourselves that we realize that that can be the catalyst to the greatest quantum leap and the greatest growth. And so I'll rewind you 4 years ago. I thought I was living this big, bold, audacious life. My hard hat, my steel toe boots, right? Corner office, right? Like doing what I was supposed to do. The two kids, the dog in the yard, the husband who, loved me most days, right? Everything short of the white picket fence. And what I realized is on that day on June 16th, husband was in Kansas City, two kids were with the sitter. I had that pink blazer on with the matching pink heels. I felt like I was really rocking it. Like Beyonce came on, and instead of turning her down that day, I like turned her up and was like, remember looking in the rear view mirror thinking, girl, you got this. Like 2022 ain't looking so bad. And as I went to that networking meeting and was going to park in the parking lot that I'd parked for 10 years, I went and took that last sip of Himalayan sea salt water and, the one that's, I don't know, J Lo tells you you're going to get that glowy complexion with. I went to go gather my belongings and I opened that car door and there he was. You see, he was a man I had never seen before. And I asked him quickly, sir, can I help you? And as that last word rolled out of my mouth, he punched me straight in the face. He grabbed me by my hair. He threw me to that asphalt pavement, proceeded to punch me four, five, six more times. But at that point, I was barely counting, Justin. I mean, blood, saliva, tears, adrenaline, like shooting through every vein of my body, just doing anything I could to survive. I was biting, I was screaming, I was scratching. And I was like into fitness. I was like, felt like I was rocking it. What I didn't know is this man was an ex-boxer. What I didn't know is that in that moment, he was going to do everything he could to keep me down. And so much so that the next thing I noticed was the large crease of his elbow. And I knew it was coming directly under my throat. And in that moment, I remember it felt, obviously it was milliseconds, but felt like minutes, right? Of saying, is this my last breath? Is this the last time I get to be the mom to Drew and Adeline? Is this the last time I get to be the wife to Andy? The last time I get to walk into that building with that hard hat and be that big, bold, audacious woman in suburbia America? And was I really living that audacious life? And then everything went black. And see, he strangled me. And I remember actually coming back to conscious, like the bright lights, the adrenaline, everything pumping, not knowing where I was, being so disoriented, but seeing that office building that always seemed so close every morning and going, can I make it there? Can I make it safely? Not knowing if he would run after me with a gun or would come and try to strangle me again. And luckily, he was in my car trying to start it and he couldn't because he would have run me over.
Mm.
And he ended up escaping by foot and fleeing into the large grasses and marsh adjacent to the office building and burying himself. The dogs and drones later found him. I went inside and, mass chaos took place. Detectives, police, ambulance got rushed to trauma. And the next 72 hours were an utter blur. Not knowing what was going to save me, why this happened to me, why did God do this to me, why was any of this going on, why would this man be here? And what I didn't know is that the night before, he actually had assaulted four women. He actually had raped a woman that morning of.
Mm.
And what I didn't know is this man had been in prison since he had been 14. I actually didn't find that out until the 11th trial with him. And what I want to remind you is 999 days later, I got to finally read my victim statement to him. I showed up to every court trial,
Mm.
every hearing. And there were days that I didn't want to. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want my husband to have to look this man in the eyes. But I knew there was something bigger. There was something bigger. There was something in me that said, I need to keep fighting for this, not for me anymore. It became the D of bold, and that's developing others. So much so that all the proceeds from my book actually go to women of domestic violence because 1 in 4 women have domestic violence going on right now, as well as that I'm changing the law in Pennsylvania to the Eric, it's going to be called the Erica's Law. I didn't name it, but it's legislation that's in progress right now, a 3-part legislation that will allow people who do get strangled, unfortunately, by a stranger to not be a misdemeanor, which it is right now in the state of Pennsylvania, and
Mm.
to actually be a felony. So justice can be served. Because if it had just been my case alone without the rape case and the other cases and his past, he would have gotten about 1 to 3 years in prison and more
Wow.
on the attempted carjack than he would have of what he bodily did to me. But I got another breath, Justin. And I look back now in the moments and the muck that I was in and the survival mode, and the 72 hours later, finally getting home from the hospital. And like I said, it wasn't the doctors or the nurses, and they were all great, and the police and the detectives and the newscasters that were showing up at my front lawn. It was that moment that I was sitting there with the hoodie on over my head in my gazebo, tears dripping down my face, wondering how I was going to put not only my face back together, but my life back together. And it was the giggles of my kids. They were 6 and 9 at the time.
Mm.
And the cannonball that my son just took. And all of a sudden, I realized that this was bigger than just what just happened to me. And I had a choice. I had a choice of how I was going to react to it. And I'm not telling everyone on this listening to this has had a punch in their life. We've all dealt with something. And maybe it wasn't a bodily punch like it was to me, and that's okay. But you've all had something that has set us back. But we get a decision and we get a choice. And when we get another chance, man, God wanted me to do something way bigger than I ever thought I was destined to do. It wasn't about the hard hat in the corner office anymore. This became so much bigger. And I am so grateful it happened to me. And one of the first things I had to do was forgive him. Not forgiving
Mm.
him for what he did, but forgive him so I could heal and I could move on.
Yeah. And obviously you were a victim in that moment, but it's your choice going forward if you want to continue to be the victim, right? And that's why the
Mhm.
saying of like victim to victor, right? Like it's that mindset shift of like, hold on,
Mhm.
I have another chance here. Yes, I went through that and it's awful, and you probably relive it all the time. I think that's the third time I've heard you tell the story. First time we connected, and then at my event because I pulled you up for the surprise panel,
Yeah.
and then just now, and it's mind blowing to me every time I hear it. Like I couldn't even imagine the
Mm.
the mental battle you went through after that, right? Like I'm sure it was debilitating at times and all that stuff. And kudos to you for allowing that to be your platform that you stand on, and continue to help other women. Like, what do you feel like you have inside of you that didn't allow yourself to stay there versus some people who do allow themselves to stay in that moment for the rest of their life?
Oh, I love this question. And this is the craziest part, just into the whole story, is I remember going to that first therapy session, like not really wanting to even go. Like I didn't even want to leave my house to because I just felt so unsafe, but I knew I needed to heal. I knew I needed to start to really work on this. And because let's face it, like trauma is it's like water. It's gonna find its way out, right? It is gonna rear its ugly head in some ways. And if you don't deal with it, it's either gonna burn inside of you, burn around you. And I was like, okay, well, I gotta step into this. And I remember going to that first therapist, and she was specialized in trauma. And I walked in there not wanting to be there. And I was so angry at this woman because she asked me to do an activity. She asked me to draw a picture of a house. And I was like, I just almost lost my life. And you're asking me to draw a picture of a house. Like I'm not at arts and crafts. I just the long and the short of it, and I could, walk you through the whole exercise, but she asked me to draw the basement. And the basement was dark, it was dreary, it was full of boxes, and it was scary. And she
Mm.
goes, and I'll never forget it. It was so profound. feeling so frustrated. My pencil was probably like, the tip of it was probably like all smudged and stuff. And she looked up at me and she goes, that represents your past. That's everything that you've pushed away, everything you haven't wanted to deal with. And what I realized is so much of the other things that had already happened to me prior to that, I had pushed away, wanted to forget, put the smile face on. And I was like, I can't do this again because I did that for 40 years.
Mm,
I have a choice now to deal with it and to use it as a gift now. And that's really, I remember that so distinctly that I was like, we like, and I want anyone that's, even if you dealt with something that was 6 years ago and you haven't dealt with it, you have a choice right now to deal with it. And what can you do to develop someone else? And when you start making it not about you, right? Your story, like Cheryl Wood says, right? Your story is for you, but not about you, right? It's for someone else. It's a gift for someone else. And when you really start taking that mindset, you're like, oh, wow, this is so much bigger, so much bigger. And so if you start to get yourself out of the muck and say, hey, how can I be the light for someone else? To me, that's when you really start to be able to say, listen, that's why I keep showing up.
yeah. It's so true. Like when you make it about somebody else, it makes it so much easier to move through the discomfort. I had somebody message me on Instagram the
Yeah.
other day, and they're like, "Hey, Justin, I know you speak on stages a lot. I'm speaking on my first stage coming up, and I'm so nervous. Like, what's your tip?" And I said to her, I was like, look, I get it, but my biggest tip for you is to stop thinking about yourself and start thinking about how you're going to change somebody in that room. What do they need? What's it's about them,
Yeah.
it's not about you. And then therefore you're immediately going to stop worrying about whether you stuttered, whether you said too many times, whatever else you're scared of about being on a stage, right? When you make it about them. So even in the small things in life like that, like if you make it about somebody else, it's so much better. And it feels a lot better too because you're like, oh wow, I made a
Yes.
difference, right? Like I made a difference in
Right.
somebody's life. Like I think that's pretty crazy, and I think that's the beauty of it. So I want to shift gears a little bit here, and I want to ask you a question I ask every single person on the show. It's a two-part question. The first part is,
Okay.
what is your definition of success? And the second part is, what are three things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Mm. Oh. Okay. I love that I didn't know didn't know you were going to ask these questions. It makes it even better. So my definition of success really goes hand in hand. And I was saying this to someone today is when you decide to be in your lane. And I go back to like a horse and wearing its blinders, right? And just like many of us just saw the Kentucky Derby and, the horse number 19, right? And how they came from the back and went to the front, right? Like, and again, I'm not saying that you're going to win every race. And I'm not saying, but that horse decided to stay in their swim lane, right? And how can you stay in your swim lane and be true to your authentic self, your audacious self, right? And stop playing the comparison game with everyone else and
Mm,
know that you're truly going after the goals that are going to fulfill you. Because at the end of the day, no one else is paying your bills, right? You get the choice to make the decision. So I think we have to stop defining success of like what it looks like on Instagram or what it looks like on how many followers or what's in our bank account or the car that we drive. What are you leaving on this earth? And to me, I could say now, 4 years ago, if that had been my last breath on earth, I had lived a good life and I had left some good things. But I honestly can say, Justin, 4 years now, if God forbid something were to happen to me now, I've given so much more legacy and life to this world, leaving it better in the last 4 years than I did in the previous 40 years because I realized like that could have been the last day. And sometimes we take something traumatic to make us realize, oh my goodness, like this is where I have to stand. And the three things that I, do every day, and I have a method. It's actually in my book called the 3-3-30 method. And 3 minutes a day before my feet even hit the ground in the morning. And I get up super early. I get up between 3:30 and 3:45. I know that's a
oh
little
my
crazy. It goes with
gosh.
my three method. So I used to be 3:45, now it's 3:30, and it goes with my 3-3-30 method. 3 minutes. I lay there and all I do, and whether it's your God, your higher up, your own mindset, whatever it is, be really intentional with your mindset, right? I talk like in my head about like what my day is going to look like. I imagine it. I thank God for everything that he's given me. I really start with that foundation. I don't doom scroll. I don't pick up my phone. I don't like nothing. I haven't even had a cup of coffee. Now, some of you that may seem scary, but and I don't drink coffee, so that's a good thing too, because that could be a little scary. The next thing is three things that I'm really grateful for, and that's pen to paper when I first start journaling in the morning. And it's literally three things that are so specific from the day before. Because, like you and I talked about, like when you're grateful for what you already have, you're going to attract more in that day. But not just, I'm grateful for my family. Give me something specific. I'm so grateful that I got to read my daughter, the Babysitter Club book and talk about Samantha last night and, as she fell asleep on my lap or whatever it was. Be really almost feel it in a visceral effect, right? And it can be something so small. I was so excited that I had my first sip of coffee yesterday and it was piping hot or whatever it was. And then 30 minutes a day to really be intentional on that goal. So people tell me time is their limiting factor. I don't have enough time. I'm too busy. Busy is bullshit. I believe in abundance, right? I took the four-letter B word out of my vocabulary and I'm like, listen, we're all abundant. It doesn't mean good or bad. We just have a lot of stuff going on. But we get to decide. And just like you wouldn't some people wouldn't cancel their nail appointment. Other people wouldn't cancel time out with the guys for drinks, right? How are you finding 30 minutes of yourself every day to work on that audacious goal? That thing that is that intention of like what you want to work on. Is it the first page of your book? Is it starting the podcast? Is it going to yoga? What is it? It doesn't have to be these big, huge things, but how are you intentionally investing in yourself every day? That's 2% of your day. 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 30 minutes, 36 minutes. Everyone can find time to doom scroll for 36 minutes, watch a Netflix series for 36 minutes. Like you can find the time. If you don't find the time, you just don't want to make the time to find it, in my opinion.
Yeah, my favorite is when people say they don't have time. And they're with me. I go, do me a favor, pull up your phone and let's look at your screen time. And it's 4 or 5 hours a day, and you're just like, you've got time. Put the
Yep,
phone down.
yep, yep.
Focus on the things you need to focus on, and you're going to be okay.
And put it in your
Everybody's
calendar. Like I
yeah,
treat that 30 minutes like it's an appointment with myself, right? Just like I would make it to the dentist appointment or make it to a business meeting or make it on a podcast, like defend it. Look at your calendar. That's a big thing. On Sundays, I look at my calendar and like, and what are the things that you can omit? What are the
mm,
things that aren't serving you, that are dragging you down, that are weighing you down? I call it don't bake the brownies, right? Like I used to feel like I was the mom that needed to bake the brownies all the time. And I finally just started outsourcing it to a woman who made phenomenal brownies, way better than me. And I was supporting her business.
yeah.
But think about any aspect of your life. Where can you start to outsource and just don't make the brownies?
I love it. So it's funny. We've been talking about legacy. We've been talking about everything you're doing now to continue, beyond you. I ask a question, not all the time, but sometimes I do. And I want to ask you the question. I want you to fast forward to the end of your life. And hopefully it's a
Hmm.
1,000 years from now. And I want you to imagine that all the books you wrote, all the podcasts you recorded, all the events that you've done, they've all disappeared off the face of the planet. And you can only be remembered for one sentence. What would you want that sentence to be?
That I left people better than I found them. That I gave them like the energy just of who I was.
I love it. I love it. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question. But before we get there, how can people get the new book? How can they attend your event? What's all the good stuff?
Oh, all the good stuff. Yeah, I'm on social media. You can find me on Instagram, but I love hanging out on LinkedIn. I would love for you to grab a copy of my book. Like I said, all the proceeds do go to Laurel House for ending domestic violence, and would love for you to grab a copy. But I would love nothing more than for you to make a decision right now. Take that action. Take that audacious step to go buy your ticket and be in the room on October 16th in Conshohocken, PA, at Weston, Maine. 180 women, sold out event. I mean, it will be next level, but make the decision. Don't say, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it next week. Like when you finish this, go buy the ticket, be in the room, be with all of us, and watch that audacious expansion really start to happen.
I love it. I know that we talked about your event at my event, and a couple women grabbed their tickets while we were there, which is
Yeah,
awesome to
which is
see.
so
Like
cool.
I love watching community wanting to do things together experiencing new rooms, new energy, all that fun stuff. And I'm excited to be a part of it and,
I was going to
be there in
say, and you're going to be at the
Conshohocken.
VIP day, like
I am.
you're going to be speaking. So, I mean, even more reason that you should buy your ticket.
Yeah, come hang out with me in Conshohocken. I haven't been to Conshohocken in forever, so I'm excited to go and check it out and do all
And
that
you're
fun
going to
stuff.
love Weston, Maine. It's like the whole hotel, like it's great down there.
I love it. I love it. So, like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, that question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Mm. Biggest moment of growth. I would say in general, it was really learning to start saying no with a period, right? Start saying no to the things that weren't serving me. I was, overcoming perfectionist, right? I'll do everything. I'll wear everything. I'll be involved in everything. And when I started saying no to the things that weren't serving me and didn't feel like I needed an explanation out of it, there was no semicolon, there was no comma, there was no and or but. It was just, no, I can't do that, or no, I can't be there. And that really helped me set some boundaries that I think I was trying to be the overachiever octopus in every location at every point at every time. Because God forbid if I said no to someone, people were going to think less of me. If anything, I think more of people when they actually do defend those boundaries.
Yeah, I love it. Erica, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom and your journey with my audience. And more importantly, for, allowing yourself to step onto these stages to be the person you are today because of what you went through. I think it's super important. So thank you so much.
So appreciate you, this platform, what you're building, and the leaders you're inspiring. And I cannot wait to see you at the Audacious Women Summit.